Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Streaming Alchemy. I'm John Mahoney, and on today's show, we're going to look at a way to include a profanity filter for those types of productions which may have somebody misspeak with a more vulgar term, and show you how you can do all that in vMix with a couple of scripts that will sort of process the cleanup work downstream. But before we get to that, first, happy holidays to everyone. And thank you for joining. And please feel free to ask any questions, leave any comments during the show, and we'll try to get to them right here as the show goes on. Also, if you would like to join us on air and join us right here in the studio, we have a link in the show notes that will let you join, and somebody from the studio will get you on with us. Okay, so let's get started. Let's see, we have a couple of comments that first I want to jump to. So we have you demand, thank you for commenting. Yeah, hopefully you do find this a useful topic. I know there are certain circumstances for people where it could be. So let's see. We also have William. William, thank you for joining us. And glad there seems to be a consensus that this is a worthwhile topic to cover. So thanks, everyone. Okay, so let's jump in. And probably the best place to start is talking a little bit about what we're going to be doing in vMix and without scripting, so it makes sense overall. So one of the features inside vMix is that you can take an audio and video stream coming into an input and apply a delay to it, both for video and audio. And so first thing we're going to do is we're going to leverage that to create what is essentially our delay window, how much time we're going to be running behind real time to give us a chance to sort of beep out or otherwise cover up anything that we don't want to go out live on air. So we're going to be using that. We've set that for 3 seconds. What we're then going to do is we're going to use scripts that will allow us to manipulate what's going on with that delayed video going out. And that means that we need to have some way to wait a delayed period of time, because what we're doing happens in real time, even though the delay is forcing 3 seconds late. So when we take an action to say, oh, I just heard somebody say something inappropriate, and I press a button to make it beep, the script has to be aware that it's applying that to something 3 seconds delayed, and that we also had a reaction time. So we have some level of reaction, and it just sort of bakes in a general 1 second reaction time. So we hear something, then we have a second to react. And when we tell it to stop beeping, it again has to appreciate that this is happening in the future still, sort of 3 seconds later than what we actually are listening to when we are truly live, not the delayed live that's going out. So that's the construct of what we're doing here. And why don't I dive into our vMix preset to really get started for how we have all this set up. So not a lot of different elements here. What I use this for is we have a host and we have a caller that's coming in, or a guest that's coming in remotely. And I have them in a 2-box. So it's basically a simple sort of 2-box sitting here where the guest and the host are talking with each other. And so those are basically the main elements for working. This could be more complicated, based on your production requirements. So that's how we set this up for demonstration purposes. Then we have 3 more elements that we have here. The first one is our delayed program. And the way we set this up, let me sort of jump in here. Hit the wrong one here. So in our delayed program, this is just a layered input. But if you go down to advanced in the delayed in this input, you can associate a delay with this. And so this delay is measured in frames. And since this is a 30 frame per second preset that we're working with, we put in 90 frames to give us the 3 seconds that we want to delay things. And so that's really the only major thing that we're doing here with, in the preset itself. And then we have 2 additional elements that we have. One element is an overlay that if something happens visually on screen, say you're out live with somebody and somebody does something inappropriate in the background that you don't want on air, it's not necessarily an audio issue, but something inappropriate that way, you can actually just cover the entire screen. And if it's just something that somebody says in the middle of a heated discussion or conversation, you can just apply a beep to that. And we have that as a media file that we can play back. And we have the blocking as an overlay that we can put over the stack of video that we're working with. And if you would like to see, before we get into the script, exactly the way this would work, I have a Stream Deck. And on the Stream Deck, I have 2 buttons that I'm working with. One is for the beep and the other is for the overlay. And the way these buttons operate is that when I push the button down, that initiates the control to say, I need you to do a beep or an overlay. And then when I release my finger, we then end up having to deal with the delay of, this is where I'm pulling it off, but we have to delay that because I don't want to cancel it right away. So the push down is initiating the beep that will happen at that future point, and then removing my finger stops the beep at another future point, but it keeps that same time. And we'll go through exactly how we do that. So the place to jump in next then is going to be in the scripts we're using. So before we do that, let me just see if we have any other comments here. So, yep, we actually have something from Biz. Biz, always good to see you. So I know it's the scripting isn't always the favorite topic of everybody, but we're going to try to adjust for that in our next season. But thanks for joining us, Biz. Okay, so let's go into what we have here. So scroll back to the top here. So the way we are working this is when I push the button down, it will trigger this script. And this script will run. And what it will do is it'll basically delay by 2 seconds. So it's giving me that 1 second. It's a 3 second total delay. So this is saying, just wait 2 seconds and then go in. So it gives you that extra second delay of response time for you as somebody who's hearing something or seeing something to react. And then what we're doing here, and I'll come to this, I have something continuous semaphore, and I'll get to that in a minute, but this is the way we're detecting when we should stop the beep or remove the overlay we're putting. And so this is sort of like our standard scripting. We're going in and getting our vMix XML to start. And we're using dynamic value 4 as our trigger to say, when do I remove this overlay? And we'll talk about how we do that or stop the beep. But let's go in. So since this is for the beep, what we're going to do is we set up an API to say, take that media input that we showed, the input 7 in our vMix preset, and reset it. So it goes back and initializes to the beginning. So if it had been playing before, this just sets it to the beginning of the tone. Then we wait 2 seconds, which is our sleep time to push this action into the future. And then we mute the program audio. So if something is being said, that's blocked. And then we add the beep on top so the audience knows that it's not just a technical dropout, but there's a reason where we're losing audio. And I just tell it, now play that beep. And this is a fairly long beep and it's looping, so it would last as long as possible. But then what we want to be able to do is we want to know when we should remove that beep. And to do that, we are waiting for this variable here that I call continue semaphore. Should I keep going? Am I done now and keep going and finish things up? So we are going right here into this little loop, which just checks, loads the vMix XML, and loads the dynamic variable 4. And it is pulling that out and saying, if that is equal to off, means we want to take this off, then exit the while loop and keep going, take everything off. But if not, just wait 25 milliseconds so we're not blowing out the system with a massive loop. And then we just go and do a while again and keep going back. And so we're going to sit here for as long as I'm like holding this button down with the beep. And then when I release, that will set the semaphore to off. And then we continue on, and I turn off the audio for the beep, turn back the audio for the program, and I stop the beep from playing and reset it again. So this just sort of covers all my bases to make sure the beep goes off and the audio comes back on. So that's all we're doing. So it's a fairly straightforward set of steps. But the reason we have to do it this way is that we're doing something that's out of sync. So in order to make this work, where it just applies the beep, or in another case applies the overlay for the amount of time that I'm holding my finger down, we need to actually use the semaphore. A semaphore in programming parlance is basically something that multiple code threads or multiple people are looking at to synchronize their actions. And now, with this in mind, if I go back to how I process the stop of the beep, I'm going to show how I have the shortcut set up for this that works with the Stream Deck. So if I go back to my vMix preset here, and I go into shortcuts, go over here. So when I want to turn the beep off, okay, we'll just sort of go in here. What I'm doing is, when I release my finger, I'm saying, wait another 2 seconds and then set that semaphore. So if I press the button and release it and it's a quarter of a second, that's fine, because it's telling me, after I do this, it's telling the system, wait 2 seconds to start putting the beep or the overlay. And then when I release my finger, it's saying, wait 2 seconds and clear that semaphore. And all this means is that for however long that is, because both of them, the start is delayed 2 seconds and the clear is delayed for 2 seconds, it's just that delta between those two. So it allows me, and I know this isn't necessarily clear when I describe it, but I'm sure as you sort of think through it, what I want to make sure is that I'm not forcing the beep to be any fixed amount of time. But because these are happening out of sync in real time, when I release that button, I need to delay how long it tells, how long before it clears out the semaphore and lets the program continue and clear. And so this works in a very straightforward way if you just understand the code. And the reason we have to do this in scripting is because this is happening with two asynchronous processes that have to touch base in common to say, okay, here's when I start the beep and something that's happening essentially 3 seconds in the future, and here's where I end the beep and something that's happening 3 seconds in the future. But all my actions are happening right now. So you don't want to force a fixed time and just sort of say, push this, and then it waits 2 seconds and then it takes it off. This gives you, for as long as somebody is doing something untoward, you keep that finger down. When you release it, it should all be in sync. And we're doing almost exactly the same thing with the overlay. So I'll just jump back into code very quickly for that and show the overlay. The only real difference we have is it's all the same in the beginning. It's just when I actually am doing the stuff to do an overlay, not only do I mute the audio, but I set a layer on the delayed program out, and we set that up so we have a value of, do on layer 10 input 6, which in the preset, input 6 is my overlay, and layer 10 on the program out is the topmost layer. So I cover anything that I have stacked up behind that. So that is essentially the structure of everything we're doing with this sort of profanity delay. It can either work as an overlay or it can work as a beep. But the other thing that's important to know is a few caveats in this. Inside of your outputs. So let's start there. If I go here, let me go over to this. If I go to my outputs here, you can only record or stream output 1 on vMix. So because I'm going to be streaming my delayed feed, I have to set that out. So that's program 5 over here is my delayed. So that is coming out as delayed. So that's what I'm going to be streaming here. The other thing is, if I want to keep a master feed and be able to sort of record that and capture the original, so if I wanted to do a more refined edit and post live, I have something I can work with. What I'm doing is I'm also using bus B for my delayed audio. So this is taking everything that's coming in through my program. And so if we sort of come over and look at my audio bus, I have my host and my caller, and they're going into a multi-box, which is what I'm sending out and getting that as my delayed feed coming back in. And that's how I do the delayed. I'm sending program out from vMix as an NDI feed, and I'm pulling that NDI feed back in here to capture my delayed audio and video. And so that gives me that. Putting the delay inside the input does that. And then routing that to output B, to bus B, allows me to create a totally separate stream. So output 1 in vMix now is my delayed program, recycled back, and it includes the original program audio that was coming in, plus a beep or anything else that I'm putting there with that. And so this keeps these two as separate streams. I have my master audio with my standard output that I can record. And if you can't record this though with your standard record, which is the other caveat. If you record, you have to use your multicorder. And if I sort of jump in here, you can capture your outputs with the multicorder. So I can go and say, if this output 4, say, is my original that I want with all my original audio, I would just tick this, and then I'd have to press multicorder instead of record to capture the sort of the raw video and audio instead of the one that we beeped out or overlaid for our live stream. So a couple of caveats in this, but definitely something that, when you start to lay this all out, should make a lot of sense for how you would do this. So that's really everything I have. So let me just go back, see if we have a few more comments, and then we can wrap up and jump into the post show. So Biz is saying it seems pretty simple, but it's in quotes, so I have to take that as maybe not as simple. But glad you found it useful, Biz. Thank you. He says he's going to rewatch from the beginning and totally try and implement. Yeah, so hopefully this works in a lot of different scenarios. I tried not to make this thing too specific. So anything that, like right now, I just have this set up so the program out is sort of this fixed number 4, and that's all I'm doing. But if I switch this, you would get the same thing. Like all I'm doing is I'm taking a program out and looping it back in. So wherever I set this up, that would apply that same type of delay. So let me just, let's see, we got another. So yes, it's Jason. Thank you for joining, Jason. I'm glad, yeah, there are probably other use cases that you could use this in. So definitely, at least the techniques, the concept of doing things sort of with a delay and processing that delayed video, that could, be used in other situations as well besides a profanity filter. But I've heard people ask about this multiple times. So hopefully this gives you some ideas for how to implement it for your productions. And Eric, Eric is asking, does the beep completely override the main audio or does it just mask it? Okay, so That's a good question. Let me actually go back to the code that we just looked at, and I can sort of show you exactly, because you could do it multiple ways. If right now, what I am doing before playing the beep is I'm turning the audio off, basically muting what's coming in the delayed program out. So I could do something different here. So if I wanted to just duck this down, I could change the audio level or do other things that would, be different from the solid mute. But in this code, it is muting it here, playing the beep, and then at the end, it's turning off the beep and unmuting the audio. Again, you could change this to anything that you wanted for how you want to process the audio, but that's all that's happening on this end. So if you want, let me see if we can demo this, how we would do this with we'll do it first with the beep and then with the overlay so you can see this. So, okay, so right now you can hear this. You hear this background noise going on, and then this loops around and he says something, so there's something inappropriate there. I respond and hit the beep, and then you can hear that beep come, and that will be sort of on that delayed. I wasn't really tracking this for real, but this would give you a sense of how that would work. Now, if I want to do the same thing with the image, the way this was set up, you say something, I can press the image button, and then when I release that, you hear the audio goes away, and you see that censor thing go up, which would cover it. So that's the way this is set up right now, but I just want you to see how this can work. But all of this, if it's not up now, it should be up in our show notes link for all the presets, and this will let you work with this and tune it. If you wanted to do a different time delay, because that's something that somebody else had asked me in a comment in Facebook, the two things that you would need to change, you would need to change the delay that you have on the input inside of vMix. And keep in mind that video does consume a lot of storage. So the longer you create this delay, the more memory it's going to take up. So if you're going to do something with very long delays, 3 seconds I thought was fairly long, but it takes up actually if I just go in, I can say, give me 1 second here. If I go in here, it's taking up, so with 3 second delay, it's taking up almost 360 megabytes. So if you did, a 10 second, you're going to be, probably over a gig of memory that you're going to eat up with that. So just be aware that, that is something that will consume a fair amount. The other thing that you'll need to change is you'll need to change in the scripting the delay, because everything, it starts off and says sleep for 2 seconds, for 2,000 milliseconds. That's just that's this piece right here. So that's just the delayed sort of giving you you have a 1 second response time sort of for this. So if you wanted to change this and give yourself a bigger window to respond and hold that down, you would change the sleep. And you'd also have to, in the shortcut, because remember when I release it, starts off by a delay before changing the semaphore. So that's the second piece. You'd need to change that appropriately too. So you know how long you want the beep or the overlay to last. But you can change this. So there's just a few things in the code that you need to do. So let's see. We have a few more comments here, but why don't I... okay, well, with this, we have automation for vMix. Great to have you here. Thank you for joining, Gunnar. I definitely appreciate you making the time. And yes, so Eric's saying a nice solid mute is best for his case, his use case. So that's great. Thanks, Eric. And Otis, good to hear from you. Howdy from New Jersey. Hope all is good with you down in Houston. All right, so what I'd like to do now is we will probably wrap up the show and we'll go into our post show. We can talk about anything you want, anything we covered here, anything you'd like to see for our shows next year. And if you can join us, that would be fantastic. if you can't, I want to take a moment right now to say thank you for all of your support through this past year for the show. Our next show will be at the beginning of 2025. And please, we celebrate Christmas here at Streaming Alchemy and NeuralNet. But whatever holiday you celebrate, or however you like to celebrate the holidays, we wish you a great, peaceful, relaxing time. So thank you. And if I don't see you, I'll see you in the new year. If not, I'll see you in a couple of minutes. Hello, welcome back. Welcome to the post show. So, as I said, happy holidays to everybody, and thanks for taking the time out, right before Christmas, at least the Christmas weekend, to come and join us. So, Eric here is asking, can we get the code you created for this? So, yes, if it isn't in there already, we'll put it in right after the show. But we have a link in the show notes to a directory on Google Drive where we put all the things that we cover each show. So all of our shows for this past season should be up there, and you should be able to get a download for all that. So if it's not there now, it will be in 15 minutes after the show. You'll have it all. So let's see. So thank you. Thank you for being a part of this community. I really appreciate that for everybody that comes in and joins us, both live and who's watching this on the replay. I am grateful for all of that. So thank you, and Merry Christmas to you as well. So Biz is, I'm intimidated by scripting, but I will give this one a shot for sure. So thanks, Biz. And like I said, that's one of the things that has come up recently is that I probably am focusing a lot more on scripting than is good for the channel. Like not everybody is as interested. So I will try to balance that out more coming into the next season. So, but thank you. And, please don't be intimidated. I think once you start using a lot of these things, you recognize that things can be a lot more straightforward. And more than anything, I think automation gives you headaches pre-production, but during a production, it can make things a lot smoother and a lot less stressful. And so that's one of the things I'm looking for in my life is a lot less stress. So that's part of my motivation here. So thanks, Biz. So, Eric, thank you. No, thanks for joining. I mean that very sincerely. So Biz is saying, he just is asking something. He says, how would you define scripting? So that's actually a very good question because it's multiple levels. And that's part of what, at one level, it is vMix scripting. So, everything that you do, that you can do a sequence of commands. I consider that scripting. At one level, if you look, and let me actually jump in because I want to show you something that we have in the shortcuts here because I think it's an important distinction. If I go into the shortcuts, when I do this overlay on, what I'm actually doing is I'm starting a script. And in vMix, you can set up a script, which is just a block of code down here. So if say, this is the censor beep. So that's all this code, what I was showing you. That's sitting in here as part of vMix. And that is scripting. This is more sort of advanced scripting. You're using VB.net, so visualbasic.net, and there's more code and logic that goes into that. But if you look at the way, if I go back to the shortcuts, the way I stop the shortcut is I'm doing something called script start dynamic. And this basically lets me do something like this, where I'm just coming back and saying, sleep for this amount of time and then execute this function. So this is not like real heavy code. This is basically vMix shortcuts, sort of web scripting. It says this is the function set dynamic value for and set the value to off. So if you go into vMix scripting, it will have these same things. So if I didn't want to put this sleep in here, I could have gone up here and sort of picked my, if you look, just so let me sort of dynamic value. So, sorry. Give me a second here. So this is the function, set dynamic value for. So if I went up here and look here and said set dynamic, you now see I have a function here that said set dynamic value for, and in the value I would have just put off. So if I just wanted to do that one function, you can do that as just shortcuts in vMix. The difference between shortcuts and this type of scripting is that I can pile a bunch of these commands all together. So if I say execute this as a dynamic script, I can just put each one of those individual shortcuts in a row and use sleep to sort of time them out if I wanted to, and execute a script that has a sequence of steps with some latencies that you apply to them. So it is very similar to what you can accomplish with the more complex scripting, but much simpler because you're basically just combining shortcuts and doing it that way. So hopefully this makes sense, but you can do scripting sort of the very detailed way, but there's a ton you can also do with scripting this way. So that's like the highest level. Beyond that, I mean, we've done this before. We use Node.js running on a separate computer to also control vMix. So scripting can work outside of vMix scripting and just basically be something that's a totally separate automation program that you're using to do stuff, which is sort of that next level, sort of beyond the vMix scripting. So there is a wide range of ways to script, but everybody should get to feel very comfortable with that script start dynamic and then placing a sequence of shortcut commands and sleep commands to sort of space timing. You can also put more complex code in there too. You could put if-thens and other stuff in there. You could do loops and whiles. So you could basically take anything you do in a script and put it in there, but just as a baseline, just putting in those shortcuts as a sequence of API.function commands should be something that if you become very comfortable doing, because it could help a lot. Hopefully that was clear. Thanks. So, are you able to customize the scripts kind of like coding, more or less? So yes, and that's everything that I put with these scripts. Let me take a step back. If you want to think of scripting, the way it works is you just have a sequence of commands that you do in a set order. The more complex things you do, like when you are looking at code, you're basically doing the same thing. Each line of code typically does a specific function. And then you can group functions together. So that's sort of like if you look at the standard scripting where you're just putting API.function and a set of commands, that's just line by line. But you can do things that do loops. So you can say, keep repeating these sets of commands. Or if this value is set, do this command. Otherwise, do that command. So you layer in logic to this, but all of it becomes things you can change. So if you didn't want to turn the audio off, for instance, if you just wanted to put a beep over it, you could have done that. If you wanted to change what elements you put on top of it for an overlay, you could have done that. So lots of different things you can change in the code, because when you start to think about it, just think about them as like little blocks. I said this block executes this, and then I can have logic around that. Do I want to execute that? Do I not? That block can be a single line, or it can be a group of lines that you put together and say these will all happen together. So different ways to do it, but logically, it's just flow logic. How do I want to walk through these commands? Which commands do I do, and which ones don't I do, and how many times do I do them if it's a loop? All that is just logic and a set of commands that are packed together inside that logic. So that's how you can think of anything you do with scripting and automation. You're just doing operator commands with logic that you put in there. And that's everything that we've basically been doing. Some of it is based on values inside of, the vMix XML. That's what we use for some of that flow logic. But it isn't something that's like magical in this, and I think it's, when you see it from the outside, it can have that intimidation factor, but it really is a linear process that's built around flow and execution. Well, what do I do when, and what do I do when I'm executing commands? That's it. So hopefully, you will be starting to feel more comfortable over time. So yeah, and you're just creating things that vMix wasn't initially programmed to do, but it's using sort of the primitive constructs inside of vMix. So vMix may not know who a guest's name is, but because it can read data, and you can use scripting to do that, you can turn around and change titles and other things and put that up. If vMix can change audio, it can change. So those things it's going to do. It's not extending vMix. Like if you turned around and said, I wish vMix had a function that did something completely different, it won't do that. But it will let you take all the primitives that vMix can do and combine them in ways that are much more sophisticated and make your production much simpler. So William is saying, most of our streams are for church services, but occasionally we do community events where this would be extremely helpful. Yes, so thanks, William. So I'm glad this won't be useful for your church services. So we'll start with that. But yeah, you never know, what is going to happen when you are dealing, in a community space with lots of different people and lots of conversations and lots of uncontrolled things going on in the background. So yeah, I'm glad that you'll find this helpful. So Jesper, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it because this is your Friday night. So definitely appreciate you making time to be with us here. So Business saying that was a great way to break things down. So thank you. Thank you for the Christmas wishes. Definitely appreciate that. And I'm glad that you found this useful. So I'm very happy to do this. It's something that I look forward to for every show. All right then. That was everything. I mean, this came, and I'll actually, Eric Goodman, who was asking some things earlier. He was the one who sort of motivated this. He had asked about whether this was something that we could do, and so for Eric, hopefully this covered exactly what you wanted, Eric. Thank you for the suggestion on doing this, and but in general, this is just something we love suggestions, love feedback for show ideas. So thank you all for everybody that's come in and made things easier with picking topics. I always appreciate that. But I guess it's probably a good time to wrap things up. Again, for everybody, thank you for staying for the post show. Always enjoy this part. And as I said, no matter what holiday you do celebrate or how you celebrate this holiday season, please enjoy yourself, be safe, relax, have fun, and we will all see you in the new year. Take care, everyone.